And I think we're live.
Oh, okay.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to House Talks. This is the very first episode of House Talk, so it's incredibly exciting. We've been talking about doing this for so long now. I think multiple years, and I don't know what it is that's been preventing us from actually doing it. Like maybe it's always like client deadlines or whatever. So we actually never really did it, but now we were like, okay, let's just try doing it. And here we are. So House Talks is going to be focused on our journey as a company and our focus on AI and this sort of pivotal moment in the planet's history where we are on this exponential curve of AI development and all the exciting aspects that also brings to our industry. And just to give a quick introduction, my name is Anders, and I'm based in Denmark. And I have a background in product design, computer science from Aarhus University. After graduating from university, I've been in multiple startups. Eventually, I went to Yeeling. I don't know who went to who, but we decided to basically start an agency together a few years back, and that has now evolved into not so much an agency anymore, but more a product focused company developing AI tools. Do you want to also introduce yourself, Yeeling?
Hi, I'm Yeeling. So I'm the other co-founder of House Collective, and my background is in UX design. I'm also a trained instructional designer. I've always been very big in the digital design space for the last 10 to 12 years. So in House Talks, we're also going to explore topics such as the gig economy, freelancer economy, and solopreneurship as we see the trend moving into the direction of everyone being their own bosses. And we're particularly interested in AI and how it impacts or rather empower us in our day-to-day lives as well as our professional lives. And how do we advance using AI in helping us as creative professionals? So we're really excited about this topic.
Yeah, and also I think resources in this space is really needed to make people like freelancers, agencies actually be able to utilize all the tools that become increasingly available and actually advance almost week by week at this point.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump right into it. Anas, how do you think AI is actually disrupting the industry?
So I think basically the whole widespread adoption of AI started with generative AI. I think it was in late 2022 that ChatGPT really got sort of a presence in the average citizens' awareness, and since then I think we've just gotten used to the rapid development that's followed. Like every week, new tools are are launched, and it's at the point now where we are looking more and more into the next stages of development in AI, where it's not only generative, it's also agentive. So it's like it's basically not only empowering us, it's also kind of starting to make some of our tasks. And I think within the creative industry specifically, like the biggest disruption is like the pace at which this is going. Last week, I thought I was developing our tool. Like I was already using AI tools to code things, like the cursor editor where it can basically code for you. But then this week, I figured out that, okay, now there are actually a lot of new tools like Replit that are more agentic. So basically, you can give it a task and it will just start building. So sort of your responsibilities as a designer, as a developer just becomes more and more hands off the actual work and more about navigating, like, what is it you want to build? What is the strategy for launching this? Who are the customers and so on? I think your responsibilities are increasingly becoming more abstract and more high level. You're just sort of becoming a manager of AIs, basically AI agents that will do the actual work for you. And I think that's pretty exciting if you actually understand how to take advantage of these tools and not wait too long to understand how it works and how to acquire new knowledge as it becomes available, because otherwise other people will take advantage of it and kind of there'll be a lot of competition at least if you don't take advantage of all the yeah. What are your thoughts?
I feel pretty similar. Like it's it's an interesting thought from the advent of ChatGPT, and over the last 2 years, we kept thinking, oh, this is it. Like we're constantly surprised and constantly amazed by the new tools. And then yet I wouldn't say every day, but every other week, every other month, we keep finding new tools. Essentially, they were all powered by GPTs and all, but there are so many new ways of using it. And it really amazes me because I keep finding new ways of using this. And on some levels, I do worry that we get a bit lazier at work. But at the same time, you also see how empowering it is that you can actually get so much done in so little time. But at the same time, I still feel like we're not really utilizing the full power of this whole thing. Like in my head, we're just using maybe like 2% of this. I think it's safe for me to say that we are both very positive about the advancements of generative AI and where this is going in the direction of enabling us to do a lot more. But I think there's also this other side that a lot of people are very concerned in regards to the misconceptions and how AI would take over their careers, what will be the future of humanity and all of that. What are your thoughts? What do you think are like the biggest misconceptions?
I would be lying if I said that I don't think AI will take over jobs. I think it definitely will, but people should be open to actually embracing that, because it doesn't mean they become irrelevant, but it means that they will probably evolve throughout life in terms of their responsibilities and in terms of what makes sense for them to do. And I think that's been the case throughout history. What made sense for a human to do in the 1920s or the 1950s, like they're probably not the same today. I think the biggest difference again is the acceleration. So it's gonna be instead of a decade before like a skill is outdated, it's gonna like be on almost a weekly basis, since it's kind of exponential, like the development we're seeing in AI. If people are open to that and actually take advantage of it, I don't think it's scary. I think there will always be things for humans to do, but it will increasingly be in a more sort of manager role, or like basically it's going to be about like how we want to design the world, and the actual practical implications of building the world as we want it is less of a concern. I saw Jensen Huang, like the CEO of NVIDIA, gave a talk at, I think it was CES, and he talked about the different levels of AI. Basically, what got AI into the public awareness was the generative AI. And there are two more stages, and I think we're actually already approaching those two stages. Like the first one, as I mentioned again, is like agentic AIs, where we have AIs basically do the tasks for us. And the last sort of most pivotal aspect of AI is physical AI, where AI becomes embodied in humanoids and different robots, self-driving cars, and so on. So I think we just have to be okay with the fact that they're gonna be like humanoids, like the Tesla Optimus, and they're gonna be capable physically of exactly the same as a human body and be able to do the same tasks that we do. And it's just a fact. I don't think we can run away from that fact. But then again, if we look at it that way, it means that the amount of intelligence on the planet is gonna increase exponentially. Like there's gonna be so much more intelligence on the planet if we have so much AI, and the cost of labor is going to be very little. So we're also gonna live in a world of abundance where we can actually build up sort of a dream planet. Like, what is the ultimate society we want to live in? What is the ultimate physical environment? How should cities be designed? Like, we can basically make our dreams come true because we don't have the limitations of human capacity. And so, yes, it will take jobs, but if we at the same time increase GDPs of world nations simply because production becomes so much cheaper, then I mean, humans can basically find meaning in whatever they are passionate about instead. Work doesn't have to be something like needed, but it can be a passion. I think a lot of media can say like, oh, it's not going to replace you, it's just enhancing this and that. And that It's true in the short term, but it's about following the development and always be, you expect that what you do now may not be what you're going to do like next year. And that's okay. And I think that's actually exciting to evolve that way and have a future be a bit more undefinable because because the world is evolving. Yeah.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing. But just to sort of connect this to the industry that we're in, what do you think are the opportunities that creative professionals are missing currently when it comes to AI?
I think I quite often like meet old friends and people from the industry. I always ask them like, so how are you utilizing AI? Like what tools are you using? It always strikes me how many people in the industry don't use that many tools, or they don't necessarily have awareness. People just really need to get used to like try out like everyone knows you can ask ChatGPT anything, but surprisingly many people don't know that you can just ask it to code for you or build an app for you, or they simply forget to use it. So I think it's also like with AI, it's about being curious. It's about trying out new things and say, okay, it might be that I tried asking ChatGPT or whatever to code something for me or build an app for me last year, which didn't work, but let me try it doing it again and see maybe it's actually better now. And usually that's the case because the development is so quick. So you always got to assume that even if you tried something in the past, like it's probably way better today. And even myself, I mean, I have a focus on AI and it's basically what we do at House. And I'm still surprised about the tools. Like I showed you Replit the other day, and I think it's been around for a while. I know it's probably been improved a lot over the last months, but I was surprised that you can basically just prompt this platform and it'll build an app or a website for you or whatever. Like I told you how I met my mom and her friend at a coffee place a few days ago, and because my mom has this idea, she wants to build a web shop where she sells some, like she's been knitting some stuff, some small decorations for the home she wants to sell in a web shop. And we basically use Replit to build their web shop in half an hour. And it's not just the generic side, it's basically the whole style and color scheme and everything they wanted. It's just there and it's integrated with Stripe for payments and checkout functionality and everything. I think it's just so disruptive in a way that like even the whole concept of building an app, everything is going to be so easy to build that people will just have their own apps. Like they'll just prompt an AI to make an app for this specific purpose, right? Like it's almost that level we're at, and it can only, of course, accelerate from here.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. Anas showed me Replit a couple of days ago, and I was like, wow, it actually made me feel like I could potentially go into development again, because this was something I did many years ago and I didn't go down that track. I became a UX designer now, focusing more on the business side of things. And in many cases, I felt very crippled because I always feel like, oh, everything that has to do with tech has to be from others, and a lot of things I don't understand. When you are so detached from something, the barrier to go back and learn becomes so high. But interestingly, with AI, it made me wanted to learn more because you are able to even tailor your learning to how you need it to be. It's no longer just reading a generic instruction, but rather you can keep trying to make it explain to you in ways that you understand. Maybe a lot of developers might feel, oh, my job will be taken and whatsoever. But if you think about it, it actually streamlines your workflow. Think about the time that's being freed up and so much more you can learn, because there are just so many things out there to continuously learn and try out. So I really don't feel like it's limiting at all. If anything, I feel like it's very empowering in that sense. I feel like a lot of people have the misconception that, oh, AI just does not get to the point that they want. But I also don't feel that we are really trying hard enough. A lot of times we just kind of expect AI to mind read, right? I type something, I expect an outcome. Oh, they just don't understand. They're not that smart. But I mean, they are artificial intelligence. They are not mind readers. I think we should
Maybe
still,
at some point.
Yeah, at some point, I think.
But yeah, I noticed the same thing with even on Facebook groups for AI and stuff like people will always be like, I tried asking AI already, but it didn't work. But I think what people forget is that like it, the AI is the result of your prompting. I mean, of course, even that is going to improve. And I don't think in the future everyone is going to be prompt engineers because AI will be better and better at understanding us and the way we communicate and articulate as humans. Um, but at the stage AI is now, people sometimes have very high expectations and they think that everything is going to be perfect in one go. But no, it's about keep trying and keep sort of approaching a problem from different angles. And in the case of AI, essentially prompt in different ways and ask follow-up questions and provide as much context as possible and so on. Yeah. And then I will say I'm quite happy with your point of like you feeling empowered to develop, because it also takes a lot of stress off me that I'm not the only one who can provide any usable code and and implementation. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think it brings people closer because it's kind of like you're speaking different languages. It could be actual language, you speaking Danish, I speaking Mandarin. But with AI, we actually are able to find a common translator. And the translation is not even textbook translation, but in a way that both of us can understand. I know people also feel like, oh, AI is gonna drift people apart. Humanity, we're already so detached from each other. I mean, a weapon is a weapon, right? Like, everything is created, but you decide the usage. I feel like it's the same with AI. Like there are all obviously there are ways to not use it in a way that gives you the most benefit. But then you can also look at it positively and see how it actually makes your life much easier. On this point, I would like to ask you this question as well. Like, how have you been using AI to actually enhance your creativity?
In terms of programming specifically, I think it's been like I started using AI for programming in late 2022. And back then it was really like the shift was the fact that suddenly like programming language didn't matter anymore. Like, so from computer science, like you learn different languages like JavaScript or Java, C++, and so on. Basically what you did was like you did this one language, and if you needed to do something new, you needed to actually learn it before you could start coding. But what ChatGPT and generative AI as a whole did was that essentially the way to get to a certain endpoint, or like what you want to achieve, it doesn't really matter what technology is that touches. Like that could be Python, that it could be any kind of language, and AI would just code it for me. I would still have, I would still use my understanding of like how you set up an app, like how you set up a framework, like a Next.js framework for front-end applications and so on. I would still need to have that knowledge, but I wouldn't need to research how do I implement this specific plugin or whatever. I would just have ChatGPT code it for me. So I think that was the first big sort of major step, because it created like it created this sense of freedom that whatever I found online as a solution to something, I didn't think I needed to know how to actually use that tool in order for me to dare to use it. I would just ask ChatGPT to do it for me. And now with the agentic AIs, like you have an agent that you give a task to build an app, for instance, and it will build it for you. I think this is the next level, because now you don't even necessarily need to know how it connects to different APIs or integrates with different tools. Like the agent will take care of that for you. So the only thing you need to be concerned about now is the concept and the user interaction and the outreach of the product you're building. So everything is going to be abstracted more and more. And you could say, of course, like, but then isn't it a problem you don't have an understanding of how things work? But actually that's been the case all the time. Like even as a programmer before AI, it's not like you had an understanding of the bits on the chip, like the zeros and ones machine language on the computer. Like you don't have an understanding of all the layers. And yeah, I mean, I can think as well. Like today, it's difficult. It's strange with with babies being born today. They are born into a world with iPads and everything is touchscreen. It just seems like a part of the natural world. But I guess it will always be like that, and we can only advance if we accept that, because as humans, we just we cannot like fathom all layers of a complex system. And I think that's okay. And also, as you mentioned before, of course, there are a lot of potential bad sides to AI. And of course, it will be an issue that we might feel that our skills are not needed as much anymore. On the other hand, that's probably for certain going to be an issue, but we also cannot stop development because it's in the human DNA to always develop, always sort of strive for new frontiers. I think we will always keep inventing, and we're going to get to a future of artificial general intelligence where we have AIs as capable or even more capable at some point than humans anyway. So we might as well get started on the whole discussion of how we approach it, and not slow it down because it makes no sense. We're going to get there anyway. So, yeah. I want to ask you as well, what are your, like, how have you been using AI? I know you use Claude a lot for your
I love
work.
Claude.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoy using Claude. I basically use it on a very, very day-to-day basis. Okay, so think about this. Like, I'm a creative and I've been a creative since the start of my career. I've never been to business school. So the last 2 years have been really monumental in terms of how AI basically helped me get through quote unquote business school without the actual certificate, of course. It's really all these questions that I had that sometimes the biggest challenge you have is you don't even know what to ask as a question. I mean, yes, we always had Google, but how do you ask Google if you have no clue what you need to ask? Like, how do you phrase that into a question? So that's where I think AI was really powerful in the sense that sometimes you just don't know how to put them into a sentence to ask. You just have this challenge. You're trying to figure it out. And many times I found myself just talking to Claude and like, we're facing this issue. You're basically giving it a scenario and asking it to problem solve it for you. Sometimes they may not entirely give you the right solutions, but more often than not, they're bouncing ideas off. They help you open up your mind. So I think that helped me become more creative. And yes, maybe a bit more lazy because I get the answers much faster now in a sense. But I do think that back and forth, right? It's a lot like going to school, and a very fun school because you pay a subscription, but you get a, master degree where the lecturer is just talking to you and it's tailored to what you need. Every question you ask, you can always contextualize to your business. If you go out there and look for business, books on business, right? A lot of times maybe it's written for the American context, written for a bigger business, for a different industry. But with AI, I was able to just contextualize it. Of course, they do not have all the information in the world, but you can always contextualize it such that it has more empathy towards what we're facing as a business on our level, on this scale. And it really helped me understand a lot more. Even, basic things like finances, which we're very bad at, like spreadsheets and stuff, strategizing new ideas, how to do sales, basically everything. I think what schools will teach you, I use Claude to just get those out on a day-to-day basis. And it's very fun. I actually really enjoy it.
I would say though that the biggest issue I've noticed is that every time you write notes somewhere, it's like a huge wall of text because
Yes.
Claude will always give like a very long text, which is good, of course. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's particularly nice these days with they can also visualize ideas. So it's no longer just writing bullet points, but you can actually ask Claude with the artifacts, right, to generate and to visualize how this would look like if I'm going to run a workshop, if I'm going to articulate something. Yes, they may not be perfect, but a lot of times it's just helping you helping you detangle from something you can't solve. But by giving you the first glance or like a glimpse of how a potential solution could be, I think it actually helped make me more confident in the things that I do. Because again, back then, before AI, right, a lot of things we we still have to trial and error a lot of stuff. But these days with AI, right, it almost feels like you always have this trusty assistant by your side to help you out. So you feel confident taking on the different problems. Like for me, it's business. Just now you mentioned as a programmer, you don't have to know everything before diving into it because AI can help with all of those.
I don't think I actually tried the artifacts for Claude. What kind of output does it give? Like, is it graphics or is it just like the sort of programmed interfaces? Like you mentioned, I think you mentioned the other day it could do React now as well, right?
Yeah, they can do React. Usually ask it to output in HTML. So whatever I need to visualize. So remember we had a lot of workshops, internal workshops, right? Big Jam workshops, mindsets workshop that we did internally as a team. A lot of it I asked Claude to basically generate how the workshop would look like. And if I need to add in an activity to make it fun for my team, a team of X amount of people, how can we do that? How do you structure the agenda? So it's really up to your creativity to go and ask the AI, but it's that first glimpse of how your solution could look like. And then, of course, you can further iterate from there. So I think that's really powerful.
Okay. What in terms of, I'm actually curious if you did anything or like explored any tools for, because you also have a background in UX UI design as well. So how do you either use tools now in that regard, or do you foresee AI also being more capable of taking on UI UX tasks? And how do you envision it would look if so?
Again, I see AI as the enabler. Like I have used Claude or even ChatGPT, for a lot of UX work. So in a way, I used it to create like, potential target audience persona, who are our audiences, where should we find them, or customer journey. A lot of times it's not perfect, but then again, nothing is ever perfect, but they give you that starting point. So previously, it would take you maybe hours to create a customer journey because you want to understand, okay, if we're going to improve this service or this product, we need to understand the entire customer journey. So it will take hours to really fill up the gaps and put down all our research findings and all of that. But these days, you can basically feed in the context. I'm creating this product, I'm creating this service for this kind of customer, for this target audience. Of course, you want to contextualize, the audience is based in Singapore. This is the persona type. Can you give me a sort of customer journey map that is tailored to this particular industry, audience, and whatnot? So they can kind of generate all of this very quickly. And I actually think a lot of people might argue, but with this, right, you basically don't need to think. No, I think it makes us more creative because remember we had a lot of brainstorming sessions where I put in a lot of prompts. So rather than giving the team, hey, we need to brainstorm this, I put down, could you guys think about this direction? What about if we expand it to this? So I feel we actually become more motivated, more inspired, but also we become more creative because it's like an assistant that constantly prompts us to think further. So I don't in any way think that it actually cripples us. I feel like we are smarter, we are more intelligent because of it, because of how we use AI.
But the way you've been using it so far for, say, UI, UX, it's mainly also been for mainly textual, conversational inspiration, right? It's not been able to do any like real visual design. I mean, I know it generates the prototypes, of course, but I mean, as I remember in the early days of our career, we were always like very, like we wanted to be pixel perfect and we wanted everything to be aligned in a specific way. I think actually that's what I see now with AI is like the biggest hurdle in terms of that is that you don't always get exactly how you envisioned it. And even if you provide context in terms of taking a screenshot of your Figma prototype or whatever, like the vision capabilities are still not accurate enough to really represent I mean, it's getting increasingly better, and I will say Replit, if you just provide it with some colors, like a color scheme and some guidance on the layout, it does really well. But I guess there's still a bit of a mismatch in terms of like you as a designer, you want it in a very specific way, and if something is just 2 pixels off, it's annoying, right? And AI is a bit more sort of rough in that regard at that point. Is that your experience as well?
Yes, to a certain extent, but although in reality, these days when we design, we barely design from scratch, right? We barely go open a file and just put in one thing at a time. A lot of times now it's we design through systems. Like we use things like ShareCN, Tailwind. A lot of these things have systems in place. There are a lot of governance in place. So I don't know. I mean, of course, I do still see a lot of value in Figma, but at the same time, I'm also thinking maybe I'm at a very different point of my career where it's no longer just me sitting down and using Figma and try to create like pixel perfect artwork. Because to me now it's how do we streamline this process? You know, we are in a startup, so everything is about streamlining. How do you speed up this process? But back in the days, of course, you want to spend the entire day making things pixel perfect. But at the same time, it's not completely dependent on you using Figma, because what if this developer doesn't understand it? They take your design and it's just not perfect. I mean, we all have these issues where we work with developers and you put two stuff together and your design file and the development file, they just don't look the same at all.
Hey, I'm a
So
developer too.
you're pretty good at that, so I'll give you that. But I think you also design with a system. So a lot of times it's about setting the rules, you know, basically setting the backend and setting all the structure out, and we just kind of follow accordingly. But back to your question, I do still see a gap in terms of creatives, creative, basically digital tools in terms of how to recreate the visual aspects of things. Although, I mean, okay, I'm not entirely sure if the future would be prompting, but I do still see the gap in a sense that in the future, maybe not so much as a gap, but I do see in the near future, we will not be just using cursors and moving pixels. It just seemed very basic. Like
I mean,
just
that's what I feel now when I use a tool. Like we in the past, we thought something like Webflow was like amazing, and we can create all the websites in the world in no time. But actually, it ended up taking a lot of time. Always, I don't know why,
yeah.
but now it just seems so daunting having to move a cursor around the screen and basically, like even like in Webflow, like doing animations or like micro interactions or whatever. It's just a lot of clicking and it takes so long. It's not very difficult logically, but it just takes a lot of time to click, right? Um, so yeah, I think of course that's gonna be AI, or we're gonna have also AIs that can just control your screen and move your mouse and do the stuff for you and use existing tools to also build things.
But I do wonder if that's a mindset shift in terms of us doing a startup. I mean, maybe you can answer this, Anas. Do you feel like there is a bit of shift in the way you do things when we were an agency versus now that we are a product company?
Yeah, but again, I don't know how much would also have shifted even if we stayed a client-facing agency because also of the evolvement of AI in the meantime. I think probably if we were an agency today, the tech stack would look different, or maybe not the tech stack, but the tools we use on top of the tech stack to actually develop the apps and websites and so on would probably be different. So, but yeah, of course it's different. I do think if we had something again like Replit back when we were an agency, I think that could have revolutionized the way we handle client work.
Mm.
Even something like pricing, because we probably I guess all smaller agencies get that it's really difficult to find clients that are willing to actually pay for your work, or at least their budget is always very low unless you really find a high profile client. And the issue we were facing was also that we simply end up undercharging. Like maybe in the beginning we think, okay, this is an okay price, but projects always slide and it always takes a bit longer than expected. There are always a few more iterations than you envisioned from the beginning. So you end up having a project you basically don't earn your time back. Like it's sort of it's not something you earn a lot from unless you're really, really strict with pricing or your time or like number of iterations and so on. But it's difficult because things always happen and there are always situations where you'll be like, okay, let me just fix that, or let's improve this feature and so on. But with something like Replit, you can have a prototype in no time, and all the feedback that the client gives you, you can basically essentially you can just copy that feedback into Replit and it will implement it for you, right? So, and at some point I could envision something like Replit or another AI basically just joining a call. Like you have a Google Meet with a client, and like we have Fireflies now to take notes. Maybe you would have another AI join the call as well that would actually also take note, or Fireflies would connect with the AI or whatever. But in any case, maybe things would just happen automatically, but things would just automatically be implemented after a call because the AI actually listens in and be like, okay, let me get started on this. Um, so I think today we were an agency in the early sort of generative AI days, and while that still revolutionized a lot, it still wasn't enough to really scale. But I think if you build an agency today, you can actually really scale with these new tools because you're not as sort of dependent on exactly like clicking around. Like even though we had ChatGPT back then, I still had to copy the code ChatGPT generate and paste it into like Visual Studio Code or whatever and test it. And there would always be bugs because then it's like different files and maybe all the files don't always work well together and so on. But I think all that is shifting now. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
Oh yeah,
yeah, those
definitely.
are my overall thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. I think besides just tools, right, as an agency, and also dealing with, okay, maybe not, let's not use dealing, but managing clients. And a lot of times as a creative professional, you want to focus on the work, and we are happy to put in hours to do the work. But when you don't feel like you are being valued, your time is just thrown everywhere. Clients go on holiday, they don't respond. And when they do respond, they expect us to respond within 2 days. It's like we are this IT support that's 24/7 available, or, you know.
Even after projects, right? Like they're all done, and then like a year later, you'll get like like a
Yeah. So
request, usually for no pay. So.
it sometimes you sit down and you wonder, did I go to design school and learn like your master's in computer science? Did we go through all that just to really hate our job because of the communication or because of the lack of communication? So it's really, it really makes you not want to be creative. And I personally feel like, if we take away all these challenges, right, we actually really like creating. We are happy to do so. If the clients or whoever gives us the freedom, we'll be happy to do all of this. But the managing, and a lot of times, I think creatives, we also very rarely creatives went to business school. So a lot of times we don't necessarily count the hours that are lost in between this email back and forth, in between this proposals, in between like pitching for a client and then they rejecting you. Also the rejection, like we have to sit through so many rejections, so much and so many negotiations just to fight for our value. It's almost like, oh, your work has so little value and we just want to get the lowest price. So sometimes it makes you wonder, what is the value of my work? It's a very big pain point, and coming from us as an agency. Oh yeah. And this brings me also to one question I have in mind. What are your thoughts on, like, with the rise of all these AI tools, where do you see the future of creative work? Because just now I mentioned that I feel sometimes I did feel devalued in terms of my work or my skill sets or me as a creative professional. And with AI, where do you think we are going? How would people perceive creative work?
I think we're gonna see like in the ultra long term. I'm not gonna discuss that now because I don't have the imagination to see like, okay, 10 years from now. I don't, but in the short term, I think what we're seeing is that what we used to do was to build one website or build one app, do the UX UI, like basically have everything be fixed and like, okay, this is one app and it goes out to like thousands of users and all that. But I think our role is going to shift a bit in terms of making up systems instead. So of course, design systems, like overall general concepts for a company, like a brand and sort of the assets that an AI can utilize to build stuff for that client. So because of the fact that apps are going to be more and more personal, like it's going to be agents that are going to be personal to specific users. And even if we do have a graphical user interface, it's probably not going to look the exact same between different users because users have different needs. Because why would we want to create one app that goes out to 1 million users if we can easily create 1 million individual apps because of AI? So I think it's going to be less about designing the absolute, like this is the absolute end product, and more about basically working together with an AI to define a strategy for a specific company, after which the AI knows exactly how to build any kind of product that aligns with both the values of that company and the brand of that company and the way it wants to communicate with its customers and so on. So I think it's going to be the overall strategy that will be most prevalent in creative work, and not, I mean, even though we like the pixel perfection, like I think it's going to be less about that, because like, the AI will just be better at being pixel perfect than we could ever be anyway. So, yeah, I think that's going to be in the short term. In the long term, again, I can only imagine I'll probably have some thoughts on that in another episode. But in the short term, it's going to be it's going to be a shift towards more strategy and less actual design work, less midnight deadlines where you need to like make everything align and make the prototype work before you need to submit it and so on, and more sort of more like ideas and overall concepts where you might not stress as much with the deadlines because you have this AI to just support you all the time.
So in terms of pricing, where do you think this is going? Do you think creatives can actually make more out of this? Or would people have the idea that, oh, then you're just going to use AI to create my work, and therefore I don't want to pay so much?
But if your role as a creative becomes to like essentially train an AI, but maybe that's a bad term, like it's going to be to, like if your end product as a creative professional is not a Figma file or a website or whatever, but it's actually like a trained version of an AI. Of course, it probably builds on existing models like GPTs or whatever. But if you can provide an AI to a client and say, okay, this is an AI where it's very unlikely that it will produce something that's not aligned with whatever you stand for. If that's going to be your product, then maybe the whole idea of pricing is also going to shift. Like it's not going to be something you just sell. Like maybe you take a cut of each like request to the AI. Like, of course, OpenAI or Claude or whoever provides the base models will take a cut of the API request, but maybe you take a cut on top of that so that you actually, instead of having projects that are fixed in cost and you just sustain yourself every month, actually you build these sort of income generating tools that are going to keep providing income. Maybe it's going to be lower income in the short term, but over the long term, and as you deploy many of these and help many companies integrate these tools and models into their business, maybe it's potentially it's going to be like a big recurring income for you as a designer.
I think it's also worth looking at it as it's not just always about charging more, but also taking your time back. We, as a culture, as a society, I'm not too sure about Scandinavia because, your work-life balance is very on point. But a lot of times we were taught, especially in this sort of technical skills, creative advertising world, where they're always about winning awards. So it's a lot of putting in the hours, but I'm not saying this is exactly work-life balance and this is a whole other topic. But I think it's worth looking at it as maybe even if you don't make more per se in terms of monetary value, you might take back a lot of time, and that's more valuable. I mean, you can always make money, but time wasted, time spent that's it, right? So maybe it's worth shifting that mindset a little bit that AI can help us do a lot of our job and give us back our time to actually live a more meaningful life.
Yeah, definitely. Elon Musk, for instance, was interviewed, I think it was last night, about how he sees the future, and he has some pretty wild predictions. But one of the more specific predictions he has, so it's not even a prediction because Tesla has all the data available, and what you can see in the data is that in 12 weeks from now, the Tesla self-driving technology is going to be as safe as the average human driver. And later in the year of 2025, it's going to be many times safer than the average human driver. So it actually means that, like, we're rapidly approaching a future where you can just like, you can commute from like now I'm in Denmark, I can commute to Italy or whatever. You just go into your car and just sleep in your car. It's gonna. I mean, I know it's gonna disrupt things and it's gonna take the job away from drivers and so on. But if they see opportunities and if they see that, okay, maybe instead of driving one bus, I buy a fleet of self-driving buses and then now I'm the manager of that fleet that just generates income for me. Like it's gonna, of course, unless you really, really enjoy actually driving, like I think it's gonna provide a lot more freedom for even like drivers who actually take the opportunity because they get more freedom. They don't have to like the buses or the cars or whatever. They're driving themselves. So it's not like they need to do that much on a daily basis, but they need to just make sure everything is operational and they get the recurring income and so on.
If you really like driving, then imagine being able to own a fleet of buses as a manager, as a business owner, but then you are able to drive because you can and because you want to. Wouldn't that
I mean,
be
you
a
can
better?
be on the racetrack you can be on the racetrack all day. Like you don't have to drive anywhere. Just like
Yes, and I think this applies to creatives as well. Think about it. Imagine being a designer where you get to just design for fun. You don't have to worry about deadlines, I mean, accountability and whatnot, but you don't have to worry so much about clients' deadline. You get to do the stuff you want because everything else is taken care of. Just imagine removing this equation that we have to work for money, but now we work for passion. We work for what we want. We work for a better life with meaning, with purpose. I think this could actually bring us into that direction rather than just fear of like being taken over and whatnot. Humans for centuries have shown to continuously improve anyway. So I don't think.
And I mean, I know you've talked so many years about building a model train. That's your dream in life, right? So imagine the time you'll get to build like a complete mini city of model trains.
Imagine all these things that you can do and you don't have to wait until you retire. What if retirement is not something we do at the end of our career? What if this is an option accessible to us now because of AI, basically? I think that would be quite empowering and allow us to hone our crafts.
Also touching on the future even more, in that same interview I referred to with Elon Musk, he also predicts, and I actually really agree with this, that the biggest product in human history is going to be the humanoid robots, essentially replicating the physical embodiment of what humans can do. Because just imagine, like, of course, there's all the productivity gains in the world, but also just at a personal level, why wouldn't anyone want like a humanoid robot that can just do everything for you? Like they can make sure your dinner is served when you get back home, or like it can basically take care of everything for you, right? And the productivity in society is just going to be exponentially higher. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we can build sort of the environment, like the indoor and outdoor environment on the planet that we really could only dream of. I think the time scale for this is not that long. It's going to happen within the next few years that Tesla is going to scale their Optimus robots into the hundreds of thousands. And at some point, there's probably going to be way more like humanoid robots on the planet than humans. We're realizing now how much AI is going to change the world by all the digital tools we're getting. But once the physical embodiment of this is it actually becomes increasingly visible in society, it's going to really make people aware of like, okay, this is actually really redefining the world and how we perceive the future. Because I don't think a lot of people realize by now how big the change is going to be, and that's both fascinating but also kind of frightening, because I don't think a lot of countries are ready for what's to come. I don't think a lot of people are prepared for it. So it's very fascinating, but it's also just something, and that's why podcasts like these, I think it's very important to get the word out there that the future is really bright and really fascinating, but we just gotta be aware of it coming and also just embrace what's coming, and of course avoid like all the negative things that will also follow. But the earlier we sort of figure out where things are headed, the earlier we can also start preparing for that future, right? And that's also applies to something like in our space, like the creative individuals and agencies. The sooner they realize that they can actually be empowered by these tools, the sooner they can also get the benefits from it, and the sooner they can also start preparing for what's to come.
I mean, to be fair, disruption is not new. I always use this Airbnb story when I tell my students Back in the days when we traveled, we never thought of staying anywhere outside of the hotel. It was always just going straight to a hotel, maybe sometimes a hostel, but your options were so limited. The thought of living in someone else's home feels like, what if you meet a serial killer? So this was the mindset back in the days, right? But somehow now, a lot of times Airbnbs become the reason why people travel, to experience those places. And that's a disruption, right? Back in the days, this would never cross our mind. Our moms would be like, no, this is crazy. Yeah, now
Yeah, you even did couch surfing, right?
yeah, oh yeah. That's sometimes I think that's still a little taboo, but yeah, exactly. Like it's all these ideas, right? We are always worried and fearful about the unknown. But then I think people just need a lot of time to adapt. However, that being said, right, with technology and I think with AI being so rapidly advancing, like you said, sooner rather than later, just get on board. You may not have to completely 100% embrace it. Not everyone's going to buy the humanoid by Tesla, but why not just see it as, okay, this is part of how it is. I always feel it's a mindset thing. Focus on the positive and how you can get there, be more, keep learning and be open to new things rather than like, what is the point of complaining about the change in the world? The changes are still going to come.
Yeah, it's pointless. The world is going to develop. Like all I see is people like complaining, oh, that's an ugly new high rise or whatever. People are very afraid of change. I think that the biggest sort of strength and skill you can have, and the most important skill you can have as a human, is the ability to adapt and the ability to be okay with change, because it's the only thing we cannot control. It's the only given thing. Like we know the world is going to change. We know the future is going to be different. We just cannot change that. So why spend your whole life being annoyed by a changing future? Like it makes no sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't think I ever felt like AI is going to take over my job. But I've also, I mean, to be fair, I think we're both quite similar in the sense that we are always in the mindset of this is coming. How can we use this to the max and where can we go next? So we were never in that glass half empty kind of mindset where, oh, I'm going to run out of this. We were never in that lack mindset. So I think we've embraced a lot of changes pretty well. I feel like that's something very important as well. Like constantly look forward and see what is out there and how we can grab and hold on to it and be a part of it rather than just constantly being afraid of something taking over. And I think that has gotten us where we are today. Not too sure how far that is, but I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. And also just be positive about the future. I see so much negativity. I mean, I get that the world is like, it can be messy, especially now with everything going on. But a lot of people just have a tendency to be automatically negative about the future. And I think that's really like pointless, because I mean, why not believe that the future is going to be great? And actually with the advancements in AI, I think there's a pretty high probability that the future is actually going to be great. And there's going to be so many sort of catalysts to solve the issues that we have through technologies like AI. And I think it's going to end up creating more opportunities than otherwise. So yeah, I honestly don't get the people who are just like pessimistic and say, like, oh, we should just stop doing, like, stop consuming, stop going anywhere, stop like flying, stop everything. We should just limit ourselves because that's the only way we can save our future. Actually, I think expand ourselves is the only way we can save the future of the planet. Be more open to technologies, be more open to disruption, and that will essentially be what's necessary to preserve the world for the future.
Yeah, agree. House Collective is focused on creative professionals. We are all about helping creatives enhance their businesses, whether you're a solopreneur or maybe a small agency. In the event that you are listening to this, but you are not yet a creative professional, or maybe you've always been interested in learning about user experience, project management, anything within that space, and you would like to understand more about how to maybe become a freelance creative yourself, please let us know what you are curious about, what you want to know. We have combined experiences of over 15 years. I think there's a lot we can really help you guys out.
what we would also love to hear is if you have any pain points specifically that you think could perhaps be solved by AI, or AI could help you achieve those goals, but maybe the tools that are available today don't quite fit the use case. Just let us know, because we're all about building like small scalable tools and AI agents that can actually help you guys with like very specific tasks within your field. And the first tool we are building is a brief generator, because what we identified is that one of the really big pain points is this initial communication with the client. Essentially figuring out what are the project requirements and what's your tech stack requirement, what's the time frame, what's the budget, and all those important things. Usually it takes a lot of back and forth, and usually through email in the very beginning of the project. In many cases, the client might even not have budget ultimately, or might end up going with another agency or freelancer. So by focusing on this step first, having an AI help you generate the brief for a client and have the potential client be able to talk to an AI about the project instead of you, we actually free you for a lot of time and frustration. That's the problem we identified to solve first, but we want to build more tools, so we are really open to getting all the inputs we can possibly get. Please write in the comments or reach out to us directly if you have any like ideas. Would love to hear it. If you go to our website house.co, we have a wait list. If you subscribe on house.co, you will actually be notified the second you can sign up and try out the tool. Yeah, so this was the very first episode of House Talks, and it was so nice to finally get started. As we said in the beginning, we've been talking about this for so long, and it's just really nice to just like, we were like, why don't we just do it? And then now we tried, and so I'm sure we're going to do way more episodes, so please stay tuned for more episodes in the future. We're still figuring out the frequency, but it will probably become a weekly thing with new episodes every week. So if you want to stay updated on that, please subscribe. That would help us a lot if you subscribe to our channels, and also turn on the notifications so you get notified whenever we have a new video published. Yeah.